Hello everyone, my name is Jada Malott and I am one of your video co-hosts for this year's not-so-traditional Day of Mourning ceremony. I hope that everybody is well and that you and your families are staying safe, and I would also like to say thank you to all of the workers who have been deemed essential and to our nurses, doctors, PSWs, and other frontline workers. Because my family and I thank you sincerely for your personal sacrifice in dealing with this crisis and keeping us safe. These uncertain times and social distancing have put us on the road to this format, but it's good because not only do we get to stay safe and still participate in this important event, it gives us a chance to be a little bit more creative. Thank you to my sister, Nicole Simpson, for being my co-host, and thank you to Mike G and the entire Day of Mourning committee for allowing me to come back and participate again this year. I've had an opportunity to watch a lot of documentaries in order to keep busy. And this is something that really caught my attention as I can see how it relates to today, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. A century ago, glow-in-the-dark watches and instrument panels that had huge military application were an irresistible novelty. They were covered in a special luminous paint that made the watches and panels glow. One of the first factories to produce these products opened in 1916 in New Jersey with an all-female workforce since the men had gone to war. For the delicate task of applying the paint to the watch faces, the women were instructed to point the precision brush with their lips and tongue. The paint made the watches glow because it contained radium, a radioactive element. The women were ingesting it, absorbing it, and inhaling it with every single brush stroke. They became known as the Radium Girls. By putting the brushes in their mouths, the Radium Girls were extremely at risk, so why would they do it? Overall, there was a general lack of knowledge and education about radioactive materials, and as a result, their employer said that it was perfectly safe, even though there were some warnings. Their bosses said that tipping the brush in your mouth was the best way to get a fine point on it. The women expressed concern about radioactive materials, to which their employer again said it was perfectly safe. They were assured there were no limits on exposure, and protective gear was absolutely not necessary. The traditionally accepted submissive role of women domestically in society translated into the workplace with their male bosses, and as a result, these women did not push for more education, explanation, or protection. Radiation poisoning isn't always immediate. It's a chronic syndrome, so months went by before any of the Radium Girls started to develop symptoms. In the early 1920s, some of the Radium Girls did start developing symptoms, like fatigue, toothaches, and severe halitosis. The first workplace-associated death occurred when 22-year-old Molly Magia died from her exposure at the factory. She suffered from a condition called radium jaw, but the company covered it up by claiming she died of syphilis. They painted her as a promiscuous female rather than someone who died due to their exposure and lack of protection. The largest point of impact was their mouths, so the radium was literally destroying their bone structure. And doctors were able to remove their mandibles by just lifting it out during autopsies. It took many more women to suffer and die before the company took any action. After many more years of deaths, disfigurements, and injuries, the women decided to organize and seek compensation, which was highly untraditional for women to do during those times. Faced with a tremendous uphill battle, they had an extremely difficult time finding representation. They finally found a lawyer to support them, and the case settled in their favor in 1928. By then, most of the women had to testify from their hospital beds or had passed because they were so weak from their exposures. These women glowed because they had so much radium in them, and some had to be buried in lead-lined caskets because they were so radioactive. So how do we tie this into today? This is a perfect example of not preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. Moving forward with COVID-19 in the workplace, we need to remain diligent and make sure we're preparing not only the workplaces that are currently in operation, but the workplaces that are soon to resume. That we're making sure management is taking every precaution possible to make sure we're not putting workers in a vulnerable position. Every workplace has its formal and informal leaders, and regardless on where management stands on how they've done or what they're doing, these workplace leaders need to be vocal and at the same time responsible and transparent. Flattening the curve is important, and to achieve this, we need to make sure we're respecting social distancing by applying PPE. So please, everybody stay safe, look out for each other, and wash your hands.